right, so exclusive. We got some ArriveCan going on. More ArriveCan questions with MP Scheer, MP Barrett, NT Genuous, MP Brock. Pierre Poliver is not around. Also, MP Scheer and MP Barrett did a press release today, and put that on probably later. Had it earlier, didn't really work out, but I'll have it up after this. So this committee is live-ish, we're about at least a dozen minutes behind time, but maybe we'll be able to catch up to be 100% right on live fairly shortly, because, they do their breaks, So without a further ado, oh, wait. We may have... So, yeah, committee was really, really hectic. Like, super hectic. Earlier, the chair ended up, like, hitting the gavel pretty hard kind of thing when he ended it. He's like, we're going to have a committee meeting tomorrow and the next day, and if I see fit, and it's hard to get these resources. The beginning of this one, the chair thanks the clerks, who I believe that's them in the booth. The real people who run the committee. Don't have to be in with the heathens. They got their own private booth. Let's watch.
Personal thanks to our clerks who have been filling in the last couple months. Besides our valued analysts, Ryan and Olivier, the clerks that we've had have just done an amazing job. Each and every one of them, even though some of them have only been here for one day, have had put through a strong work ethic and have treated this committee as if they were the permanent clerks. So thank you very much to all the clerks who have filled in for the last month, and we'll look forward in March having our permanent clerk assigned to us. Just very quickly, we mentioned we'd get to the budgets for the ships. We separated into two different. There's the Halifax, Quebec City trip, and then the Vancouver, Victoria. The Vancouver, Victoria is particularly high because the way it's been done up, it's planned for an extra day in case we get caught because of weather. Do not ask why we would expect Vancouver, Victoria to be caught with weather, but that's just it. I'm just looking for thumbs up. This is only to submit to the liaison to start the process of our visits to the 4 shipyards. So Halifax, it's been sent out to everyone. Halifax, it's $79,612. That's up to, I've looked at the budget, seems a bit high, but that just covers every contingency. Vancouver, Victoria is $95,255. Same issue. Are we fine for that? It's not setting dates or anything. It's just for us to send it to the liaison committee for their approval, if we can get it. Wonderful. I see no objection. Go ahead. I see Mr. Scheer, you have your hand up, sir. And then Mrs. Vignola.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move a motion that I'll just provide a little bit of context for before I move it. A little bit of a recap of what brings us here today to the motion that I'd like to propose, and it has to do with the ArriveCan app and some of the shocking revelations that we've heard from the Auditor General and her findings. To back up, during the pandemic, this was decided to bring in, the government decided to bring in an app for Canadians, forcing Canadians to use this app to document their crossing the border into Canada. It should have cost just around $80,000. Instead, so far, the Auditor General has concluded that it is at least $60 million in costs attributed to that. And that's based on what she can find.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kuzmarchuk.
Yes, I would appreciate it if my honorable colleague would ground his statement in fact not fiction
It's not a point of order.
and exaggeration. So again, I think it's important that we ground our discussions here. I know he's new to this committee, but I'd appreciate that he would ground his arguments and
Mr.
interventions
Generous, let him speak,
in
please.
fact.
Thank you, Mr. Kushmarchuk. Is your hand up on this point of order, Mr. Generous, or can we proceed?
No, I was raising it to be added to the speaking list, and this is clearly not a point of order, just a dilatory tactic. So I think.
Thank you. We'll go back to Mr. Scheer, please.
Yeah, just to let the record show that the Liberal MPs are now calling the findings of the Auditor General fiction. So that's new to me,
Point
Mr.
of order,
Chair,
point of order,
that's what I
point
heard.
of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. I
I've got you,
really
Mr.
don't
Kushmarchuk.
appreciate. I don't appreciate my colleague ascribing to me statements that I do not hold, and
You
and
just
I ask
said
that he
it,
retract.
please.
I ask that he. No. I said that you should stick to facts, not fiction. Not the
Oh,
Auditor
right
General,
off the
whose
bat.
recommendations.
On that point of order, Chair.
absolutely I
Point of
respect.
order.
Okay. Mr. Barrett, and then hopefully we can get back
The
to Mr.
ocean's
Scheer.
getting wavy.
Chair, wants and feelings. I'm just wondering if we can point to those in the standing
Okay,
orders,
that's
or
not a-
or if we're just
order
going to, or if these are indeed dilatory tactics, and Liberal members should restrain themselves.
We will ask everyone to please maintain some decorum. Mr. Scheer, we'll get back to you.
I was just for the record, I was quoting the Auditor General from her appearance just this morning. But basically, what we're dealing with is $20 million worth of contracts going to GC Strategies. The Auditor General has told us and told committees that there was not documentation around decision making, that there was a non-competitive process that was pursued, there was an accountability void, and these costs clearly ballooned from $80,000 to $60 million. This is a company that's gotten $250 million worth of government contracts since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, and this committee has tried to get answers from the directors at GC Strategies, and they have ignored two summons. So this committee has summoned them to come and testify. This committee has similar powers to that of a court of law, and parliamentarians are entrusted to provide answers and transparency on behalf of Canadians, especially when it comes to tax dollars. When the government forcibly takes dollars out of the pockets of Canadians and decides to spend it, taxpayers have a fundamental right to know where the money went, why it was spent, and whether or not all the rules were followed. The Auditor General has raised major red flags. I mean, the language that she used in her report, her testimony today in committee, these aren't just findings of sloppiness or some I's not dotted and T's not crossed. She has exposed monumental levels of mismanagement on this. So I'd like to propose the following motion. Given the seriousness of the fact that the summons have been ignored, that these officials at GC Strategies have not come to answer on what they did with taxpayers' money, how invoices were accumulated, who signed off on these types of expenses, and whether or not the work was actually done. These are important questions that Canadians absolutely have a right to know. And based on the statements of MPs of all parties in the House, I believe that this should be a very straightforward motion that we should be able to accept very quickly, because it touches on the collective rights of parliamentarians, not for ourselves, not as individuals, but with the responsibility entrusted to us from Canadians. And therefore, I believe that we should all support this common sense motion to ensure that when a parliamentary committee demands somebody come and testify to answer for how they spent Canadian tax dollars, that those summonses are respected, that the law is followed, that the proper process and protocols are adhered to. So therefore, Mr. Chair, I would like to move that the committee report to the House that, given that, one, GC Strategies owners, Kristen Firth and Darren Anthony, were issued summonses on November 2nd, 2023, compelling their appearance before the committee on December 5th, 2023, and refused to testify. and new summonses were issued for them to appear by February 9th, 2024. And again, GC Strategies owners refused to testify before the committee. 2, the Auditor General revealed that GC Strategies received nearly $20 million in government contracts on ArriveCan alone, double what was originally projected. 3, the Government of Canada has $250 million in contracts with GC Strategies listed on its website, but claims they cannot confirm the accuracy of this amount as the website is prone to error, casting further doubt on how much this two-person IT company has received since the company formed in 2015. And 4, the RCMP is investigating contracting links to ArriveCan and has met with the Auditor General concerning her findings in the ArriveCan audit. The committee recommend that an order of the House do issue requiring Christian Firth and Darren Anthony each to appear before the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates at dates and times determined by the chair of the committee, but within 14 days of the adoption of this order, provided that if the chair of the committee informs the Speaker and the Sergeant-at-Arms in writing that one or both have failed to appear as ordered, A, the Sergeant-at-Arms shall take Christian Firth, Darren Anthony, or both of them, as the case may be, into his custody for the purposes of enforcing their attendance before the committee at dates and times determined by the chair of the committee, for which the Speaker shall issue his warrant accordingly. And B, the Sergeant-at-Arms shall discharge from his custody a witness taken into his custody pursuant to paragraph A upon 1, a decision of the committee releasing the witness from further attendance, or 2, a further order of the House to that effect, and C, the Speaker shall inform the House at the earliest opportunity of developments in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer. It has been distributed to everyone's P9. I do have a speaking list. I see Mr. Genuis and then Mr. Jouari. I've reviewed it and do believe it is a case of privilege. So we will start Mr. Genuis, then Mr. Jouari, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I don't want to affirm and agree with everything that my colleague has said. I wanted to just make a couple comments about the general principle here. What are we actually talking about in terms of the powers of Parliament? So we have a massive breaking scandal that has clearly gripped the attention of Canadians. This is the ArriveCan scandal. And as part of that unfolding scandal, we at the Government Operations Committee have been trying to get to the bottom of what happened and who was responsible by calling witnesses and putting direct, challenging questions to them. And we've been able to proceed, I think, fairly effectively with this investigation for a number of months, hearing different witnesses, uncovering critical information as part of this scandal. And now the level of public interest and engagement with this has significantly grown after the reports of the Procurement Ombudsman and the Auditor General with even more devastating information. So we believe that in this scandal, in any scandal, it's important for parliamentary committees to be able to do their work and get to the bottom of what happened. But now we have this problem. The problem is that a number of witnesses are showing flagrant disregard for the critical role and the rights of parliamentary committees. Now, we're not just here as individuals. We're here on behalf of the Canadians who sent us here, who want us to investigate this scandal and be able to undertake other investigations of other matters. And in order to do our job, we have to be able to bring witnesses before us, witnesses who may not be that keen on testifying because they have things that we might want to ask them about that are actually embarrassing for them. So the principle has to be that parliamentary committees are able to do their work on behalf of Canadians, and that means being able to bring witnesses. So when we have two separate instances of summons being sent to the same individuals and them refusing to testify, the committee must use its powers to insist that those individuals appear. And this is really where the rubber hits the road and where members of all other parties have to consider. Do they believe that we should be able to actually hear from the witnesses we need to hear from and get to the bottom of this or not? Because the only way that this committee can enforce its insistence on hearing from these witnesses is adopting this motion, which will have the effect of enforcing the committee's demand that these individuals appear. Now, Darren Anthony, one of the two partners at GC Strategies, has never appeared before this committee. And all the time this has gone on, we have never heard from Mr. Anthony. We've heard once from Mr. Firth, but there was so much obvious trouble with his testimony, so many obvious gaps. He effectively admitted, under questioning actually from a colleague across the way, he admitted to a process that involves the forging of resumes, altering resumes, and then seeing if the changes are okay. So we need to hear from these individuals that are at the center of this scandal. And I understand that they may not want to appear. Their company got $20 million, as far as we know, according to the Auditor General's report, $20 million for the ArriveCan app, where they essentially got the contracts, subcontracted them without doing any work. They got $20 million as a company simply for looking on LinkedIn and passing contacts and resumes on to the government. In many cases now, we know with alterations made to those resumes. So these two guys have a lot to answer for, and we need to hear from them. But moreover, Chair, we cannot abide the principle that people at the center of a massive national scandal can simply blow off a parliamentary committee. If we take our job seriously, if we take the integrity of the parliamentary process seriously, then we must insist that people that are told you have to appear before a committee actually be made to appear before that committee, particularly when these are the individuals that are at the very center of the scandal. These two partners at GC Strategies, these are the ones who got the ArriveCan contract. They're the ones who made the money. They're the ones that had the relationships within government and the public service. They're the ones that can actually shed some light on this. So it's up to committee members now to say, do we take our job seriously? Do we take our role seriously? Are we willing to do what is required to get to the bottom of this? Or are we going to establish a precedent in which anytime there's a scandal, someone says, I don't want to appear, and they come up with some excuse for it, and then we just let them get away with that. Conservatives say we don't let them get away with that. Conservatives say that any party who's serious about investigating the ArriveCan scandal and getting to the bottom of what happened, we need to see your support for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jouari. Then Mrs. Vignola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, on our side, would like to, would like to ask for a suspension on this discussion on this motion. And the reason is as follows. We would like to validate whether the sergeant at arms actually can take witnesses into custody. Will they be going out of the proceeding to be able to do that, and the consequences, impact of that. So we need some time. It's not that we disagree, finding a way to be able to call the witnesses in to come and answer. We're all for transparency, and we support. We just want to make sure that procedurally we are doing it right. This is the first time that we've seen this motion. It would have been good knowing that this motion was prepared. We would have had it before we had the first hour of the meeting, that we could ask such questions. But you know what? Probably we should have asked and we didn't. Well, so be it. Well, we have the opportunity to do that. Therefore, when I read the motion as it's been prepared, there are statements in there that I also like to go back and validate, i.e. that the RCMP is investigating contracting links to ArriveCan and has met with the Auditor General concerning the findings in the ArriveCan audit. I'm not sure whether RCMP is actually doing an ArriveCan audit. We've just heard from one of our colleagues that we don't know what RCMP is doing, and we don't know whether they're investigating complaints as it relates to Butler AI or as it relates to ArriveCan. So there are statements in here that if we agree to it, may have an implication. And I'd like to go back in with our team to have that conversation. And, this is not the 10 minutes conversation that I can ask for suspension. We are out, so we're not in the same room. So naturally, we need to set up procedurally for us to get together and have that conversation. So my ask is suspension of this conversation, and we will pick it up in the next meeting that we have, whether it's going to be on Wednesday or Thursday, to have this conversation. But we really need to get clarification around jurisdiction of sergeant at arms. Is this doable? What kind of precedence does it set? And how do they take these witnesses into custody and bring them to the committee? I'm not sure whether the sergeant at arms has the right to arrest. Probably I'm doing it the wrong way, but this is my suggestion, and this is in actually support of making sure that the motion that we are putting to the House and to the sergeant at arms is the right motion, and it's actionable and it's legal, and we understand the implication. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. I'm not sure if I got the will of the committee to wait till tomorrow, but let's, we have a bit of a speaking list, Mr. Jouari, so if it's okay with you, I think we'll continue on the speaking list, and then we can address it. And I'm sorry you're not feeling well, that you're under the weather, but we'll get to, we have Mrs. McNola, then Mr. Scheer, and then Mr. Green, and then perhaps we can get back to yourself, Mr. Jouari. Mrs. McNola?
Thank you very much, Chair. This is a motion that is just quite strong, I'd say. Even very, very strong. Several individuals have been mentioned, 5 at beginning, now 3 persons who have mentioned health concerns, health problems, but who didn't want to appear in committee. I'm harking back to the teacher in me, Mr. Genuis, and Ms. Firth appeared in committee on November 2020, and on another occasion. So he did appear. Let me say this. We have these 3 witnesses who say they're sick for different reasons, who aren't feeling well. And we've asked them on many occasions, but we didn't, if my memory serves me well, we asked them to come back, but not necessarily to in-camera meetings. But with this new nuclear bomb that has been dropped, if I go back to what Mr. Bedell was saying earlier, I think we'd be better to move one step at a time in terms of reporting back to the House, a question of privilege, that the Speaker make a ruling, and so on. And if they still refuse to appear, well, then we could take other measures. You say to them, you have to come. But with this nuclear bomb that I mentioned, we have to move forward in the process. I know there have been letters. I don't want to know anything about that. I don't want to. It's not. That's not my issue. But I just don't want make the situation worse. These people have problems, mental health problems, so they say. Yeah, I haven't seen a doctor's certificate to that effect. Maybe the lawyers around and here have. But anyone who has had to work with people who suffer from mental health issues, anyone knows that each little thing constitutes a mountain at some point. There's an accumulation of little things. And here, maybe maybe I'm being overly motherly. And if that's the case, I'll willingly admit it. But I just don't, I won't take on myself the responsibility for making somebody do something that they don't want to do in this instance. We have to take it step by step, little steps at a time, address the House before we actually move to this type of measure. That's what I have to say. I'm not really against the motion, no, but I think there's something we have to do first. So that's it. Yeah, I'd be in agreement to suspend the discussion and come back to it too.
Okay, I do have Mr. Sousa, Mr. Generous, Mr. Kusmirchuk, and Mr. Gill on the speaking list. Colleagues, I apologize. I have to suspend just for a couple seconds to fill everyone in on one thing, but I need to suspend quickly. Just give me a couple seconds, please.
Okay, so we suspended. We're catching up. We're almost at live. Yeah, we're there. Almost. Well, it was quite some. Okay, so there we go. We're 10 minutes behind. We're a little closer here. All right, we got some plant life with the MP Green. He's got a little garden in there. I wonder if he's got some. I don't know what type of plants are they. All right, let's see here. Okay, Villa back. Enjoy.
Everyone's patience.
Thank you.
Mr. Green, thank you for waiting. You're next on the list. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I had hoped perhaps there could have been some consultations and agreements found around the room, but since we're back to this discussion at this time in the meeting, I do feel compelled to indulge my friend from the Liberal side on what it is our powers are as a committee. I think it's important that we recognize indeed there is a precedent, not just for the powers of our committee, but I'm actually concerned about the precedent in which indulging this type of dismissal from attending to our committees might present to future people who want to seek to elude accountability to the Canadian public and ultimately to our committees. So I would say this to the benefit of those who may not be familiar with our House of Commons practice and procedure under the Boston Gagnon. If you look at Chapter 20 in committees, there is a specific reference to committee powers. And in that committee, in that section, there's a subsection that specifically covers to send for persons. You can reference that both online and for the people that are watching committee interested in what it is Parliament has the power to do, I would send them to the section to send for persons. And I will, for the indulgement of this committee, just reference that standing committees often need to collaboration.
I think he said sick for persons. I'm going to go back. Did he say sick for persons?
Of this committee just referenced that standing committees often need the collaboration, expertise, and knowledge of a variety of individuals to assist them in their studies and investigations. Usually these people appear willingly before committees when invited to do so, but situations may arise where an individual does not agree to appear and give evidence. If the committee considers that this evidence is essential to its study, it has the power to summon a person to appear. And in that opening paragraph in our standing orders under committees, subsection committee powers, under the heading to send for persons, there's actually a reference note, a footnote that would go to 151 in the Boston Gagnon, which says this power delegated to the standing committees by the House is part of the privileges, rights, and immunities of which the House of Commons inherited when it was created. They were considered essential to its functions as a legislative body so they can investigate, debate, and legislate and are constitutional in origin. So this notion that we don't have the ability to do this, I think, undermines our power and would potentially set a dangerous precedent. I know that we've had, many examples. I've had my staff messaging me times when this had occurred, referencing back to the WE scandal, referencing back to, previous parliaments when we were trying to, provide this type of oversight. There are multiple paragraphs to the effect of which I've just quoted out of the Boston Gagnon. And I would encourage all members of the committee to get themselves a copy, to look for that, and in fact, in a very nonpartisan way, uphold and protect the privileges that we have as committees. Because if we're going to start making appearance before our committees optional, I can assure you, not just this committee, but I could think about the impacts this would have on ethics, the impacts this would have on many other committees, that people who are inside the physical boundaries of this country are inherently under the constitutional powers that we have here to send for them. This isn't just limited to actually having them come appear before the House. We also have an unlimited ability, as set out in the standing orders, to send for papers and records. And this is a government, unfortunately, a Liberal government, that, in my opinion, has been negligent in this kind of open by default rhetoric that they use, where they also refuse, in many instances, to provide basic records that would account for accountability to the Canadian public and indeed to our Parliament. So for those that are perhaps unfamiliar with the principles that New Democrats hold on this, know that we will be supporting, I would suggest, not just the ability to send for people, but also for papers and records as it relates to this, because it is an important aspect and one that is deeply protected by constitutional precedents going back to the founding principles and laws and governing orders of this House of Commons. So I'll spare you the other 6 paragraphs related to that section, but I would call not just our clerk, but members of this committee to refer to the Green Book, to the Boston Gagnon, should they ever have any questions about what kind of powers they have here at committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Sousa, please.
So this is putting us all in a rather precarious position, because there's matters of confidence within in camera. We don't want to break those rules. So we're not here to make public some of the issues that we have been advised by in camera, nor by legal teams that have also written to us in regards to these matters, in terms of some of the witnesses that are being called before us, without having given them the opportunity to provide, how should I say this again, without breaking the integrity of the in-camera discussions that we've had, but we're not giving them the opportunity to actually show us or to validate the reasons why they're not able to attend. And then, of course, the RCMP may or may not be reviewing this case and looking for whatever criminality or admissibility that may be had. And will we then, as a result of doing some of what we're doing here, not be admissible thereafter? That concerns me too. And then we have an investigation underway, which we're trying to complete, and we want to be able to use every opportunity that exists for the investigator to take appropriate action. And does this then preclude it or prejudice that outcome? Possibly. And I'm just worried about the public confidence that we're possibly compromising, because there's certain access to information that the community has been made aware of. There's certain advisement and recommendations or suggestions that have been given to us in camera. And now the opposition from the Conservative Party have taken it upon themselves to reach out to certain witnesses, have obtained matters of confidentiality before them, and has divulged it thereafter in questioning of other witnesses, compromising again the confidentiality matter, and then being put on notice by those matters. So individuals have taken it upon themselves to go forward on things that will compromise, I believe, the integrity of the investigation that we're trying to get to the bottom of. And here we have, even today, we are told, members of the committee have been told that there are certain witnesses that are coming to see us this week. We don't know anything about it, but somehow this information is being shared with the Conservative Party, and nobody else in the committee is being advised of that. So that is in itself a problem. And even this motion that's been before us, it was obviously well prepared ahead of the activities today, because it was taken upon discretion to proceed on something even before we had our in-camera meeting today. And again, that's disturbing. So it's important, I think, we take a pause and suspend this issue until we have greater understanding, even from the RCMP, in terms of the implications of what may be put forward here today. It's important for us to suspend because I know people want to make possible amendments to this motion to provide greater understanding and clarity and protection of certain witnesses, right? They have that right, and we should be providing them every opportunity to be protected, while at the same time protecting the government and the committee members. We have a duty to ensure that we get to the truth. We have a duty to ensure that we understand everything that's been that has occurred. And
point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Sousa. Wait one moment.
I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. Mr. Sousa just said the role of this committee is to protect the government. I absolutely reject that. The role of this committee is to find out what happened to taxpayers' money.
Appreciate it. Not a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Sousa.
Actually, but now that's coming forward, it's important to distinguish that we absolutely have a duty and responsibility to taxpayers, and we represent the taxpayer. We're here to represent Canadians. We're here to ensure that all Canadians have due process, and that we uncover any actions or things that have not been done appropriately. And the Auditor General and the Ombudsman have come out with reports. We have an internal investigation that's also coming forward. But I'm suggesting that there are certain members of the committee on the Conservative side that have taken actions on their own accord, which jeopardizes this very issue. It's them that I'm suggesting needs protection, because we got to make certain that the parliamentary procedure and the supremacy of Parliament procedure is not that of individuals, but of committee, because all of us in this committee have a responsibility to ensure the positive outcome and success of uncovering these allegations and ensuring that we determine what has occurred, and that we do so with proper integrity. And I'm concerned that without more time to put forward appropriate amendments to the motion, and without possibly considering the implications of what is being put forward, because I suspect we are actually doing a disjustice possibly by bringing forward certain individuals who have, and again, I'm cautious because we ourselves are being advised to be sensitive to what we say here in public. And that very issue is at stake. I mean, in certain respects, some of this should be done in camera too. And I would caution that if we're dealing with some degree of illness or health or whatever it may be, people need to be protected, and we need to have confirmation before we proceed to demand or hold someone in contempt or arrest, whatever, without having proper considerations, and that hasn't been provided here. In this motion, there's nothing here that says that the witnesses deserve to provide confirmation of their situation. I understand that we want them to appear before us. I believe we all want to understand what has taken place, and we already have quite a bit of information to that effect. We also have, as I said, a number of investigations still underway, and we don't want to compromise that activity. We talked at length today about the admissibility of some of the situations that may be before us, and that may be compromised as a result of what this motion puts forward. And of course, there's the issue of confidentiality and privacy. That's at risk here too by bringing forward some of this without taking proper precautions ahead of issuing that call. We want them here. We want everybody to appear. We don't want to set a precedent that would provide people an opportunity not to. But we have to affirm the situation and make certain that it doesn't then compromise both the witnesses that were at stake here and stakeholders, nor the investigation that's underway. And I would respectfully request that we suspend this discussion until we obtain greater insight and understanding of what this means, maybe even asking the RCMP or others in terms of what is being proposed here, and if it's being done, maybe it's being done too expeditiously, maybe it's going to create greater harm. And I will leave it at that. Mr. Chair, I request that we suspend.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sousa. I don't take that as a formal motion, and we're almost out of time.
I will leave it at that. Mr. Chair, I request that we suspend.
Thank you, Mr. Sousa. I don't take that as a formal motion, and we're almost out of time anyway, so I got Mr. Genuis, then I have Mr. Kuzmierczak, and then Mr. Baines.
Thank you, Chair. Much of what Mr. Sousa said doesn't make any sense. And just a couple points on that. I mean, number one, Mr. Sousa is very familiar with instances of government scandal. He was part of a government in Ontario during which a gas plant scandal occurred in which people went to jail. And I think he should appreciate the importance of parliamentary committees being able to do their work and get to the bottom of what happens. He let the mask slip a little bit when he said that he thinks the committee should be working to protect the government. That is not the role of parliamentary committees. The role of parliamentary committees is to—
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
I suspect this will not be a real point of order.
It's a point of order. I mean, Mr. Speaker, you said something
go
that
ahead,
I didn't
Mr.
say.
Sousa.
Yeah, I did not
say
that. A point of order, just to correct the record, I did not say that.
No, that's not a point of order. Correcting the record, expressing opinions.
I will decide that, Mr. Genuis and Mr. Sousa. Thanks for your comment, Mr. Sousa. It's not a point of order, but Mr. Genuis, go ahead, and if we could be cognizant of our time, please, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Before I go any further, I want to put forward an amendment, though. My understanding is that this will help us move forward. There have been discussions going on among the parties, and I hope this will help us get to the result we want, which is maintaining the integrity of the process and allowing committees to do their work. So I move that the motion be amended by adding immediately after the words "dates and times determined by the chair of the committee" in both places where they appear the following: and with such accessibility accommodations which the witnesses may request.
Sorry, could you just slow down a bit in reading that?
I can, but I did provide it by email to the clerk, but I'll read it again.
Thank you, sir.
So the motion be amended by adding immediately after the words dates and times determined by the chair of the committee in both places where they appear the following: and with such accessibility accommodations which the witnesses may request and the chair agrees to provide, end quote. And by replacing the word 14 with 21. So that is the amendment. It has been sent to the clerk in writing in one of the two official languages. So I gather it will be a few minutes before it can be distributed. This is about trying to work collaboratively on aspects of the process. But the main point, Chair, remains that as I think Mr. Green very ably put, this committee, all parliamentary committees, have important powers that they can exercise. And in this case, the committee must exercise those powers in order to get to the truth. Now, comments have been made by other members about possible reasons or excuses that various witnesses have made. We've had multiple different witnesses make excuses, not just one. Where we've had various instances of these excuses being made. These two people, Christian Firth and Mr. Anthony, are at the center of this scandal. Their testimony is vitally necessary for this committee to be able to do its work, and no excuse has been supported by any kind of evidence or documentation. It's time to just stop this charade of more excuses and more asks, and to actually insist that they appear. The other point I'll just make is that this motion is not punitive. This motion insists that the will of the committee be followed. If the people that are summoned comply with this motion, there will be no further consequences. This doesn't propose, for example, to imprison them for 6 months, regardless of whether or not they appear. It simply proposes to use all of the tools we have to insist that they appear, and then after they appear, any consequences or associated with this motion disappear. It is just a motion that applies the necessary corrective to get the result that we all need, which is that parliamentary committees can properly do their job. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Generous. We just have a short bit of time left before we lose resources, but I have Mrs. Vignola, then I have Mr. Kuzmierczuk on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very quickly now. I agree with what my colleague has proposed, but I want to be sure about a detail here. I'm going to read it in French because the English version, I'm going to leave it up to the specialists in translation. But right after ArriveCan, in the audit of ArriveCan, I would add the following steps are asked to ensure that the package is delivered. So to have the witnesses appear, the following steps are recommended. First of all, the 21 days, and there is no change to these sections. And secondly, at the beginning of the next paragraph, that is after the 21-day period time, the Sergeant at Arms and the Speaker of the House would be informed, et cetera, and everything remains the same. But I just want to demonstrate by this addition that all steps were taken before we dropped the nuclear bomb, as I referenced earlier. In view of the fact, I mean, we don't want to have to start the same discussion in 3 weeks' time from now. all steps were respected. There was, it was very clear that what we were asking was incremental, and therefore that the witnesses were requested to appear without, of course, adding further injury to their health. But that would allow these people to be more, to feel like appearing. I think that we have to remain polite, respectful in this instance.
Thank you, Mrs. Vignola. So we have a sub-amendment offered by you. Just to help us out, are you able to repeat the exact changes you wish or you're offering up in your sub-amendment?
After, in the ArriveCan audit, to have the witnesses appear, the following is requested. First of all, that an order of the House be issued requiring requesting Christian Firth and Darren Anthony to appear before the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, and that determined and the times determined by the committee, but within 14 days of the adoption of this report. And a second step, after 21 days, the committee would inform in writing the Speaker of the House and the Sergeant at Arms that one or the other or both of them, as the case may be, did not appear, and then we would have exhausted all necessary steps. I believe that I have sent this to the clerk of the committee for you.
Do we have time to put the question on the whole thing before we adjourn?
Mr. Kusmerchuk, is your hand up for the sub-amendment or the amendment? Go ahead, Mr. Kusmerchuk.
My hand is up for the sub-amendment.
Okay. I had you up for the amendment as well, but let's go on the sub-amendment, sir. On Mrs. Vignola's sub-amendment.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to begin by stating that we have been studying this ArriveCan issue now at committee for 5 months, and everybody around the table is committed to getting to the bottom of this important issue. And so we've studied it for 5 months. You'll have to correct me if maybe it was longer than that, but I believe it was 5 months we've been studying this issue because it is important and because Canadians expect us to do this work. We've had millions or requests for, I believe it's millions now, pages of documents related to ArriveCan and other studies that we've had before this committee, and we've agreed to those. Our site has agreed to those. And we've had testimony from a wide range of witnesses here, which we welcomed. Obviously, we had most recently the testimony of the Auditor General, Ms. Hogan, which we welcomed her recommendation. We thanked her for her important work and welcomed those important recommendations that shed light on this issue of the ArriveCan. We had the Procurement Ombudsman, Mr. Jeglich, as well here before this committee, and we heard his important testimony and the results of his important study into this issue. And of course, we had Mr. Lafleur, who is the CBSA Integrity Director. I guess that's what you call that position, Executive Director, Integrity or Process, testifying as well in terms of the internal CBSA investigation that's taken place. We welcome that testimony. We absolutely support that testimony. And we took those recommendations to heart because they are important. They talk about a process that is in place that safeguards the integrity of the procurement process, but also safeguards the trust of Canadians in this process. And it was really important to hear from all of those. Every step of the way, we have been, the members of Parliament around this table have supported every witness, every appearance, every production of documents that are required. Again, millions of pages of documents. And so I think it's important to highlight that. I think it's important to highlight that every member of Parliament is united around this committee table to get to the bottom of this issue. And I do take issue with some of the comments that are made by especially some of the new members of committee and some of the existing members of committee that talk about that falsely talk about the lack of spirit of collaboration and cooperation around this table. I think the facts speak to the absolute opposite, which is that we have been working together. Point
of order, Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Kuczmarchuk, one moment, please. Yes, Mr. Barrett.
Just wondering if you could poll the room, because it looks like all members of the opposition are ready to work together and collaborate and pass the sub-amendment, the amendment, and the main motion, and move this ahead. Just the member was talking about collaboration. It looks like a majority of members of committee are ready to, and it looks like the Liberals are blocking this motion from passing.
Thanks, Mr. Barrett. I see your point, but it's not a point of order. Mr. Kuczmarchuk, if you're... We'll proceed, yes. Sir.
And again, hundreds of thousands of pages.
Millions of pages of documents
needed to be produced to help provide facts and help to anchor our discussions and our investigations in facts. Because again, we are all committed to getting to the bottom of this important issue. And I noticed, for example, my colleagues have highlighted the power, the incredible power of privilege for members of Parliament to produce documents, to call in witnesses, to testify, and we have availed ourselves of that power and of that privilege. But I do believe and that power is absolute, as we heard so many times. That power is absolute. But if you actually read some of the rulings throughout history of speakers Milliken and Fraser and Scheer, you will read cautions that we must use that power responsibly. And we must use that power responsibly. And you see that woven throughout history in the words that the speakers use. And so what we tried to do here, we've never been shy calling witnesses to testify here, never. What we're trying to do in this really unique situation, which I have not encountered in my 4 years here, and I surmise Kelly hasn't, the chair hasn't come across in his 100 years here. On
point of order, it's 107 years. Mr.
107 years. And I just wanted to say this is a unique situation. There really is no playbook for this. At least I haven't seen it. And I think that's why we're trying to work our way through this carefully. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to weigh the privilege, which is absolute, of members of Parliament to call witnesses. But we're trying to weigh that privilege against our legitimate concern with the health of the witnesses. And we're trying to find our way here. And it has been reported in the Globe and Mail. It has been reported in the Globe and Mail the severity of those health concerns brought forward by the witnesses, and specifically mental health concerns. And I think that there is, and rightfully so, amongst members of Parliament, a deep concern whenever someone brings forward mental health concerns. And I think rightfully so, as members of Parliament, we are concerned with the mental health of folks, including when they walk through the doors of OGO committee. We have to take that seriously, especially if someone has gone out of their way to communicate those mental health concerns directly with the committee. I don't think that we can dismiss that simply out of hand, or we can't attribute to it certain motivations or try to impugn certain motivations for that. And so that's what I'm struggling with. We've heard from a lot of witnesses here. I want to hear from Mr. Firth. I want to hear from Mr. Anthony. I absolutely do. And I think every member of this committee wants to do that. And again, look at the past. We've shown we have not been shy about calling witnesses to testify here, to produce papers, you name it. We've supported it. But there's a balance here we're trying to strike. And it's important to also highlight that the patience and the accommodation of this committee is not absolute. And no one should be under any impression that we want to extend this courtesy and this sensitivity infinitely and far out into the future. We do not. The patience of this committee and the understanding of this committee has its limits. I don't believe we've reached those limits yet, for two reasons, I would say. I do believe that the motion in front of us is as my colleague, MP Vignola has pointed out, this is a nuclear button, as she has called it. And I believe that it misses a few steps, a few important steps. And I think some of it was alluded to by my colleague previously, but that step included, for example, requesting, and I think this is a reasonable request, that the witnesses validate or substantiate the expression of, again, mental health concerns that they have or health concerns that they have. I think it's fair to ask for example, that there is substantiation, medical documentation or substantiation, a letter of some sort that speaks to that. And that is also true, not just of, that is true of the other witnesses that have asked for consideration based on health concerns and health issues. Absolutely, we want to make sure that the issue of health or mental health is not used as an excuse not to appear before committee. We're very sensitive to that. We want to make sure that that privilege is not abused. And so again, having validation and confirmation and substantiation from a healthcare official, I think is an important step and is an important vital step. I think that we have not taken to date, and I think it's one that is in our purview to ask for. And so I do feel that we should put aside this amendment. We should put aside the original motion for now, and in its place, ask for substantiation and confirmation from a healthcare professional. So at least we have that documentation on record and in our pockets to be able to inform our decision and what is going to be our next steps. I want to reassure the folks that are watching at home that this committee is being very careful with this, and we've had meetings and discussions about this issue of how to proceed. And again, we don't have a playbook on this. This is so unique. And again, we want to make sure that we are able to move forward, that we are able to continue to get the hundreds of thousands of documents we're asking for, that we continue to bring witnesses here that are shedding light on this issue, to make sure that we speak with facts, not with fiction, as I've always highlighted, and that is what guides our conversations. But there is a balance. That needs to be struck here, and we're trying to balance the need of this committee to get that information, to hear the testimony, and balance it with, again, the very real sensitivity about someone who has stated clearly that they are not in a healthy space, that they are in a dark space, that as has been reported in the Globe and Mail. And I think we need to take that into serious consideration. At the same time, I think what's really important here to keep in mind as well is that we do have two ongoing investigations. One for sure that we are certain, and one obviously we don't have a clear line of sight because, again, the RCMP doesn't exactly telegraph not only its investigation, but it's the contents or direction of its investigation, and rightfully so, because they don't want to undermine the integrity of the investigation, and they want to make sure that it is a fulsome investigation that is able to proceed without any tampering, without any obstruction, and any sort of outside influence. So again, possibly there's an RCMP investigation. We don't exactly know the entire scope of it, nor will we know the entire scope because the RCMP is an independent organization. There is no political direction of the RCMP. That's a good thing. And so the RCMP is conducting its work. At the same time, we heard from Mr. Lafleur a testimony that the CBSA is also conducting an investigation, and that the CBSA has moved from what was a preliminary investigation, a preliminary study, to now a full study, because there is evidence that is substantial enough that warrants a full investigation, which is taking place right now. It's ongoing as we speak. We heard from President O'Gorman that is taking place, confirming that the CBSA is indeed bringing this forward. And so the second element, obviously the first element is the individual, the health of the individual that we need to weigh. But the second element is the integrity of the two investigations that are now taking place. And there was some concern. There was concern that was verbalized, not just by the Liberal members of the OGO committee, but also by the opposition members, that there is real concern with making sure that we don't do anything here that compromises the integrity and the effectiveness of the investigations that are going on, both the RCMP and the CBSA investigation. And we've seen concerns with information being shared from the preliminary evidence of facts that were part of which were made public, even though it was a confidential document, before this committee actually determined that we wanted to share that information with committee members. And I think that that's really important because I think making sure that all of us have the information that we need in a timely fashion, I think is important in terms of our own ability to question the witnesses and being able to be prepared to question the witnesses. And again, a perfect example of that was quite recently when we didn't have all the information as committee members in our hands. The study, the preliminary study of facts, was not distributed to this committee. And so we were not able to ask, all of us were not in a position to ask the important questions of the CBSA executive director for procurement or integrity, all the questions that we wanted to ask. Process matters. I would state that process absolutely matters in this case. In this instance, and how we go about studying the ArriveCan app. And we have to make sure that the process is also fair. But again, fundamentally here, we want to make sure that we are not in any way influencing the investigation, the independent investigation that is taking place by the RCMP. Because if we want to get to the bottom of this issue, if we want to see if there is any we've already heard about the gaps. We've already heard the tremendous concerning gaps that are in the procurement process. The lack of documentation that the AG had so thoroughly outlined, the lack of documentation, some of the checks and balances blatantly that were missing. And so we know that the process needs absolutely improvement. strengthening, and that needs to happen. But we want to make sure that we don't impact the independent investigation over the RCMP, because they're digging deeper. And they're looking at not just process issues, which is what the AG has found, and what the procurement ombudsman has found, and what the CBSA integrity executive director is finding. It's not just about process, but it goes to something a lot more serious than that. A lot more serious than that. And we want to get to the bottom of it. And we do not want to impact in any way the RCMP looking at these serious.
It's okay to do a long speech. I'm totally cool with really long speeches, but you have to change the level of your tone, up, down, up, you know, the four winds, or else nap.
Produce papers that we want, and we have over the last five months. We absolutely have done that, but we need to balance it, both in terms of protecting the independence of the RCMP investigation and the CBSA investigation, while at the same time, again, demonstrating concern for the health and well-being of individual witnesses. At the same time, what we're trying to figure out, and you know, we've had meetings and discussions amongst ourselves, and what we're trying to figure out is we want to make sure that again, the issue of health, and especially mental health, is not being used as an excuse to avoid coming here to testify. And again, that's a very delicate balance here, because we don't want to impugn any motives or assign any motives to those folks. I think it's important for us to be able to take that into consideration. But I would say as well, when I look at the original motion as well too, and I know that we're speaking to the amendment here, but what the amendment here doesn't address.
I'm going to interrupt you, Mr. Kuzmierczak. It's on the sub-amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, pardon me. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. As always, you have a sharp eagle eye to these discussions, and you're absolutely correct. But I wanted to say that for me, one of the issues that I have here is that even in the motion, there are in the preamble there are sentences here.
Do you feel the filibustering, or is he just going on? I'm actually not sure, so it may be really good.
And I turn your attention specifically, for example, in the motion to part 3 that states, that the committee report to the House, given that the government of Canada has $250 million in contracts with GC Strategies listed on its website. And again, even that number there, if we were to agree to it, we would be agreeing that we agree to that as established fact, which is it's not at this point. We're still trying to figure out what is that number in terms of the amount of contracts that the government of Canada has entered into with GC Strategies. And the reason we need to look at that is because, again, we've heard testimony, or we've seen correspondence that states that there is some double counting that may have occurred, and so we want to be sure that number is correct. At the same time, we know that we want to go further than just GC Strategies. We know GC Strategies was established in 2015, but we know that the principals of that company were actually entering into contracts with the government of Canada long before 2015, long before GC Strategies was ever created. And so one of the things that we asked for on this Liberal side is that we expand the scope of what we're interested in looking at.
Sorry, one moment. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Kuzmierczak. There's a point of order. Mr. Scheer, please, on your point of order.
I just have a procedural question for the chair, if you could just help me understand something. Mr. Kuzmierczak has had the floor for about 20 minutes now. Am I correct in understanding that if he continues talking this out until 4 o'clock, the meeting will be forced to come to an end, and therefore he is blocking this motion from coming to a vote today?
At 4 p.m., I won't say everything that you've just said, but at 4 p.m., we are out of resources and we'll be adjourning.
So he's effectively blocking this motion from coming to a vote.
4 p.m., we will be adjourning. Mr. Kuzmierczak, floor that you've just said.
Till 4 o'clock. Question for the chair.
We're interested in looking at.
Sorry, what? One moment. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Kuzmierczak. There's a point of order. Mr. Scheer, please, on your point of order.
I just have a procedural question for the chair. If you could just help me understand something. Mr. Kuzmierczak has had the floor for about 20 minutes now. Am I correct in understanding that if he continues talking this out until 4 o'clock, the meeting will be forced to come to an end, and therefore he is blocking this motion from coming to a vote today?
At 4 p.m., I won't say everything that you've just said, but at 4 p.m., we are out of resources and we'll be adjourning.
So he's effectively blocking this motion from coming to a
4
vote.
p.m., we will be adjourning. Mr. Kuzmierczak, floor is back to you.
Well, thank you. And again, I really do appreciate we have to look at the fact that according to the CBSA, and a document that they published on their website that breaks down the costs, yes, the $80,000 was for the actual original app, the app itself. But what we're really talking about here, the additional costs stem from the following. For example, a Service Canada call center was stood up and established to be able to receive calls and emails from travelers who are using the COVID health measures and the app, and if they have questions, to the Public Health Agency of Canada or the CBSA, they're able to contact this call center. That was valued, the actual cost of that based on March 31st, 2023, the document that was published, that was $8.5 million. The call center was $8.5 million. Data management for the Public Health Agency and CBSA to collect data, report, monitor, and ensure compliance. You have to keep in mind that the app was actually downloaded 60 million times, if I'm not mistaken. It's something like 18 million users, 60 million times. There was a ton of information that was collected, sensitive information. And so you needed to have a data center that's able to gather that information, share it with all the provincial health agencies, keep it also confidential. That data management was $7.9 million. Was the data management for that. Then there are data storage and cloud services. Again, to be able to store the data safely and securely, because this is sensitive information. 18 million downloads, 60 million travelers over just 2 years. That data storage and cloud service was $6.4 million. And again, I encourage the folks listening, including the journalists and the that are listening, to download. This is called the Border Public Health Measures Cost. It's a document that's available on the CBSA website, and it breaks down all the costs of the ArriveCan app. In addition to the Service Canada call center, in addition to data management, in addition to data storage, there were additional systems on the back end that needed to be stood up and created in order for the ArriveCan to work. I'll give you one example: cybersecurity. To ensure that all cybersecurity and security measures are met, an additional $2.4 million was spent on cybersecurity. Now, why is that important? Well, when you're crossing over the border, let's say the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, and you're sharing your personal health information that you just filled up, you're darn sure Canadians want to make sure that that information is secure because it's sensitive information. You can't just treat it willy-nilly. You need to make sure that when it is shared with the other provincial health agencies, that it is secure. That was $2.4 million.
Mr. Kuzmierczak, I apologize for interrupting you. First of all, thank you for mentioning the viewers on Parview, all three of them, probably my wife and two kids watching. Thanks for mentioning that. But we are out of time.
Is there a willingness to just put the question real quick?
We have no more resources, so I am adjourning. But thank you very much, everyone.
See, there you go. Thanks for watching. He talked the clock. They had a hard stop at 4 o'clock. As like they said, the resources, they were done, and they're going to continue on, when Parliament resumes. We got some comments here. We got to end the poll. AUKUS. So AUKUS is basically Canada's not involved in it. We're not spending much money in the military. They just cut $1 billion from the military. They're giving a bunch to Ukraine, but we don't have artillery. It's just not a liberal priority, it seems. No, they didn't get to vote. Boomer Media. No, they didn't get to vote because they procedural, talk the clock, didn't get a chance to vote, and because it's an off week, all these people, I guess they're like, they're in overtime pay or whatever they don't have the resources, the clerks and the people the people that make the things run. So yet again, sink the party further. I don't know. End of the poll. What do we got here? AUKUS. Thank you all for watching. So should Canada try to join AUKUS, right? So most people said no, by far. And then yes, and then make our own subs, which was surprisingly pretty close to the second. All three, and then subs for eating non-military members, I think, mentality of the 16%. And so, yeah, they make our own subs. Nuclear subs, or maybe we could make battery run subs. I don't know, no idea. That does not seem likely, as the last subs we have were bought from Britain. They were like second-hand bought from Britain, and they had issues. There was some, fallen sailors. Awful things. But they fixed them up. They only got about 200 days out in sea the last few years. Apparently, that was another report. No, it's not their focus. I don't know what is. Okay, so thanks for watching. What else do we got here? Yeah, he ran the clock out. So that's going to go on. Basically, he said, apparently, I guess one of these individuals or someone who was requested to see, as you can see in the Globe and Mail, is having issues, right? He's stressed and he don't want to go to committee. I think he could request for a committee in camera, meaning that the public can't really see unless you're like in the room, and then you got to go through all the security, it's just basically no one really gets to see it, except those that are directly involved. Westford Assembly was stationed in the West Edmonton Mall. Yeah, that's the Canadian. Actually, if you look up jokes, I think that's like one of the Canadian jokes on there. Tammy, as an aside, that what's crashing hard now. Entire electrical vehicle. No, it's not. It's not going to crash. It's adjusting. I don't think it is. I think once the batteries come online and they're cheap, once we got that figured out, that's it. Yeah, well, we're not making the batteries here yet, remember? That all will change when we start making the batteries, and the supply chains are coming here. What's happening is the supply chain issues with all of that stuff. We don't got the supply chain issues, and there's a little bit of a kerfuffle going on. Thank you, Bromsley. Yeah, Fife. And there's that Fife link, Globe and Mail. Magnan. Thank you. And Shmew thinks that says, keep it up. All the tactics will only sink your party further. It's definitely. They need to. I think the Liberals can actually get out of it, which is because the voters most voters are very fickle. And if they did like a $200 billion housing plan, like disgusting, it actually could change things. I think it could, but you know they're not going to do that. Give money to the plebs? No, not really a voting block. Not big enough voting block. People and most politicians see it as a voting block. They're not realizing the other voting blocks will see that as and you know dip their little fingers into it.